As Board Secretary, I'd like to call to order the December 6th, 2021 Conestoga Valley School Board Reorganization Meeting. At this time, please rise and join me in the pledge to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now elect a temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization.
I'd like to nominate Diane Martin as temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, and if there are no objections from the holdover or re-elected directors, I declare the nominations closed. All holdover or re-elected directors in favor of electing Diane Martin as temporary chairperson for the purpose of reorganization, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it.
All right, at this time, Mrs. Martin will call roll.
7 directors present. 2 holdover directors, Mrs. Groff and Mr. Benigno. 2 re-elected directors, Dr. Martin, Mr. Talley, and 3 newly elected directors, Mrs. Kapka, Ms. Trowbridge, and Mr. Hurst.
At this time, I'd like to welcome everyone to the December 6th, 2021 Conestoga Valley School Board Reorganization Meeting and Board Work Session. So as a reminder, the 3 newly elected board members cannot vote until sworn in. Can I have a motion from the holdover or re-elected board members to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Second.
All holdover and re-elected board members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I will now have Denise Martin read the certificates of election and administer the oath to office.
I will now read the certificate of election from the County Board of Elections of Lancaster County. We, the undersigned members of the County Board of Election of said county, hereby certify that after tabulating the votes cast in the municipal election held on the 2nd day of November 2021 in said county, it appears that Mr. Michael Talley, Mrs. Diana Kapka, Ms. Kathleen Trowbridge, and Mr. Philip Hurst were duly elected to the office of School Director, Conestoga Valley School District for a 4-year term in the county aforesaid. Additionally, Dr. Diane Martin and Mr. Michael Talley were duly elected to a 2-year term in the county aforesaid.
I hereby decline the nomination for 2-year term of office of school director for Conestoga Valley School District.
At this time, I will administer the oath of office to Dr. Martin, Mr. Talley, Mrs. Kapka, Ms. Trowbridge, and Mr. Hurst. Would the 5 of you please stand and raise your right hand and prepare to receive the oath of office? I
Aye.
state your name.
Michael Talley.
Do solemnly swear
Do solemnly swear.
that I will support, obey, and defend
Support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
Constitution of the United States,
and the Constitution of this Commonwealth,
Constitution of the Commonwealth,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Thank you. The newly elected members, please.
All right. We will now take nomination for election of officers. I nominate candidates recommended by the nominating team, Audit Groff for president and Michael Talley for vice president.
I appreciate the nomination, but I'm going to decline the nomination for vice president.
Are there any other nominations?
I nominate Phil B. for vice president.
All right, so we will now vote for the office of board president. All in favor of Audit Groff, say aye.
Aye.
We will now vote for the office of board president.
Vice President.
Vice president. All in favor of Phil Benigno, say aye.
Aye.
I need a motion to elect Audit Groff and Phil Benigno as president and Phil Benigno for vice president.
So moved.
Second.
I'll take roll call, starting with Mike.
Aye.
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 All right, it is unanimous. Congratulations, Ms. Audit Grau and Ms.
I want to thank you for the privilege of sitting at the front table once again. I've refused this position more than once and never expected to return, but we are in an unusual time in board history. And I want to start this evening by welcoming all of our new school board members. This is my favorite meeting of the year because it marks a change, and it's something we should always embrace. Unfortunately, we're unable to offer all of our new board members a mentor, which we usually do at this time, but we will find a way to ease your transition, I promise. My hope for us is that we will work to maintain our reputation as a high-functioning board, and I'm sure I speak for the holdover members as well as the administration and staff. We will do all we can to ensure that someday, when you come to the end of your service, you will be proud having been part of it. My personal goal is that all board members are equally informed and equally respected.
Thank you, Audit.
We'll now move on to our next issue is I'd like to declare that with tonight's appointments of our new and returning board members, we now have 7 seated board members. We're obligated by the school code to declare any open seats vacant within a prescribed time frame. As such, I need a motion to declare 2 seats of the school board of the Conestoga Valley School District open.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? The motion passes. The board will notify the community of the specific process to fill these 2 seats. In general, a deadline for applications will be sent. Interested applicants will submit their application and their resume. A special meeting will be held within 30 days where selected candidates will be interviewed, and a decision will be made to appoint 2 individuals to the 2-year positions on the board. The swearing-in ceremony will be at the January 10th, 2022 board meeting. For more information will be posted on the district website. And I think we're now ready to finally get on with our agenda. Am I right? We're at item number 3A. Are there any board comments on board activity? And this is, excuse me, this is the first chance for public comments, and I'm going to continue with the protocol we had established, that at this time during the meeting, if anyone would like to comment on an issue that's on our agenda, they may step forward. If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine items that we've discussed before, or that we're required by law to pass. Are there any questions on the agenda, or do I have a motion?
I have a question.
Yes.
When we vote for these consent items, are we doing it how we did it before where it's all or nothing?
Mhm.
Okay.
Unless you want to
We'll stop. With new board members, it helps to explain it this time. If there's an item on the consent agenda that you have a question with, it's very simple. You may ask that right at the beginning before we vote. If there's an item on there that you do not want to vote for, all you have to do is ask that item A, B, C, D, whatever, be moved. My only request is you ask it to be removed just for a separate vote or for further discussion, because there is a difference. And we will then address it as soon as we finish with the consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay, did you want to make a request?
Yeah, I request that like item B be moved.
Item B,
Yes, B for
okay.
board.
Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we
Approve?
approve, I gotta get this down.
That's okay.
Approve the consent agenda besides item B.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in, I think you better do this by roll call.
Roll call.
We're gonna start with you, Phil.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, would you like to address item B?
Yeah, that's fine. There has been lots of concern before the previous issue with solicitor, regardless of where certain people fall on certain things. My personal concern is not that I so much have a problem with our current solicitor. My problem is that I feel that while he is entitled to give him his recommendation on items that we discussed and what we should approve, I personally feel that the solicitor's job is also to understand where the majority of the board stands on items, whether he agrees or disagrees, and therefore he, as a paid person or product of us, should be, while giving his opinion, should be able to make certain things happen that we want legally, obviously, not, you know what I'm saying? So he may give his opinion on whatever, the weather, okay? We may disagree on the weather. He should be then to say, okay, well, right, I disagree with the weather, but at the same time, this is what I think you can do to say the weather is bad, so it's legally, I'm just trying to use an analogy, something, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think so. Any other comments? I would add that our reliance on our solicitor is to make sure we do not overstep the law.
Correct.
We may not like what he tells us, we often don't, but that's his job, to tell us the way it is, despite how we personally wish it were. So I'm not quite sure where you're drawing the line. If you would like a more extensive discussion when he brings us a recommendation to give your opinion and have him thrash that out with you, we can certainly let him know that that's how we'd like it presented to us. Would that satisfy?
You wanna say something?
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay.
If we don't approve this, then when's our solicitor contract up?
We just,
I know we just went through the
we
RFP
just did a
process.
comprehensive request for proposal, and we used to have Cable, Kell, and Omni and Lloyd were our solicitors for a number of years. What happens is, when a question comes up, because administration deals with the solicitor on a daily, if not weekly basis, so our interaction is very frequent. We rely on him to provide us information, as Audit said, in the best interest of the district, the legal best interest. And he has given us both, this is the legal, this is what happens if you don't. Case in point was the masking issue. And he gave legal advice, and that's what it is. And he gave both sides of the story. And after giving both sides, the board unanimously, 9-0, voted to approve the health and safety plan. So you may not like the advice, but his job is to make sure you get the legal advice. So in order to go to say, if you want to run through another request for proposal at a later date, we can do that.
Is that contract, how is that set?
It's renewed every year at this meeting.
But can it be changed midway?
We need to, midway it can be, yes. So that's what we did with our last solicitor.
Okay. Are you suggesting you'd like us to consider a new solicitor?
Correct.
We can discuss that, okay?
And I'm not necessarily saying we have to dismiss Barley Snyder. That's not what I'm saying. Is there
I thought
another?
that's what I just asked
Well,
you.
yeah, there's, what I'm trying to say is could we potentially use Barley Snyder, but use another solicitor in that firm to represent us per se? Do you see? So,
All right, this is a contractual and legal and personnel issue that we'll take care of at executive session.
Okay, that's
We'll
fine.
have to see how we can do that.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Deb.
Meanwhile, I do need a motion to approve item B.
So moved.
Second,
Mike, let's
Yes.
start with you.
Aye.
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 Okay. We're all straight on that?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, all right. The board liaison appointment is the next thing on our issue. I am going to take the privilege of tabling this to our next meeting to give the current board members a chance to become familiar with those responsibilities. I would appreciate if both sitting and new board members, I'm sure you're all sitting board members, if all board members would get in touch with me if there's something that interests you, if you want to keep or let go of an appointment that you currently have, and if you want more detail as to what all is involved.
Can I hear what the current board members, what groups they're with, or?
Yes, I have that.
Yeah,
They're-
it's under
they're,
the-
It's on the screen there.
Yeah, Act 48, currently, Act
Yep.
48 is Mrs. Martin. Do you have the names there too? Are the names posted?
They're there.
Oh,
Thank you.
okay.
Thank you. I'm new. Well
Okay.
done.
That's why I
Um,
mentioned it.
Before we
That's
move on,
right.
there is one small thing that I skipped that I do want to bring to everyone's attention. We just approved the Pennsylvania School Boards Association Principles for Governance and Leadership. And I do this every year. I encourage you all to take a moment, take 2 moments, what the heck, and read it carefully. Because it's important that we understand how we function, what our responsibilities are and aren't. And I think it's worthy of our time to take that little bit of time to read over those an extra time. Okay, policy review, is that Phyllis?
I start off, actually.
Are you starting? Okay.
I am, it's board policy 005. It's actually the organizational meeting, which we are at right now. What we've done is we've just made sure that the policy matches the practice, that the organizational meeting shall convene, and we added with the board secretary calling the meeting to order. Everything else flows nicely. The reason we crossed off and shall recommend a holdover board member to convene, it's a redundancy, it's already in the policy. The only other addition deletion talks about an assistant secretary. We will, if Denise is ever out, we will appoint an assistant secretary who's here. Katie is always here, Katie Meyer, so we can make a resolution at that board meeting. If Denise is not here, we will just appoint Katie
I have a
at that
question
time.
about that. You deleted out a board member may serve as assistant secretary. I don't know why that was deleted.
Because the secretary cannot be a board member because we're a class
Yeah,
two.
well, I know the secretary can, but I looked it up in the school code,
Mhm.
and when under assistant secretary, there isn't that limitation. I think if someone were absent, we would do better to elect a secretary pro tempore. That is for one meeting.
Okay.
Assistant secretary is a more permanent position. I don't know, that you elect them now and they stay assistant secretary for, that entire term. But if you need someone to fill in for one meeting, that's the secretary pro tempore.
Then we will delete the entire assistant secretary
Okay. Well, I think,
because it lists secretary pro tempore
yeah,
at the next session.
yeah, that's it. In that situation, that's the only thing we need.
Okay?
Is that it under, any other questions on policy 005?
No, ma'am.
617.
Okay, so I have the next 4 policies. I had also asked Mrs. Martin to attach to the board agenda for tonight the policy review schedule. So holdover board members have seen that, but I thought since we're starting anew, this would be a good reminder so people don't have to hunt for this document later. It'll certainly be in your board orientation packet as well, but probably the more places you can find it, the easier it makes it. So our 4 policies for tonight, starting with 617, petty cash is the first one. And one of the things that we've been trying to do with policies is take out detailed procedures. So you'll see in this particular policy, the section that really goes into the detail, we have simply deleted from the policy and we'll be excluding that. Certainly, we will not be deleting it and it goes away. It will go into our procedure guidelines, and we've started a document where we're grabbing all of the procedures as we've kind of done that before and make sure we're capturing them. So the procedures themselves, the only change that we will be making to them as we pull them out of this document and into the procedure manual is the very last one says with the designated individual's name, and we're simply going to change that to responsible employee because that's what the language was that we used earlier in the policy, so then it'll match up. But other than that, it's just grabbing it and moving it to the procedure manual.
Under that delegation of responsibility, you talk about each responsible employee. Do we need a definition for that? mean, who's the responsible employee that handles petty cash? How's that decided?
So,
That seems like a vague term.
yeah, and we typically let the building principals decide who the designated person is. Is it, though, always lined up to the person on the depositories that they approve for student activities as well, or can it be different people? Okay, so in our buildings, it tends to be the same person. If you think when we approved that in June, you approve those list of signers or approvers for those funds. They typically use the same people here
Well, then maybe you should say so here.
as designated there. Okay, we can go back and look. I don't remember what we call them in that document, but we can change this to match that.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And I have, never have any problem getting procedures out, but I think that you ended up with having a simple statement saying they are obligated to follow the established procedures. So that should be added in.
Okay. All right, we will make those two changes for
Thank you.
next Monday. The next one is the student activity accounts policy. And in this one, there are a lot of little changes, but not a lot of dramatic changes. We tried to clean some wording up where we didn't use, for example, the delegation of responsibility wording that we've been using in the other policies. Trying to make sure where we referred to advisors, we're always saying faculty, which is what we have used other places in the policy. Referring to the manual the same way at each spot. Some title changes. And then the one sort of strategic, I guess I would call it, change that we made is towards the bottom. One of the sample policies that we looked at specifically talked about graduating classes. And we had some of this language in, but some of it was up above. And so we tried to take some language that was under that and move it out of the way so that the language about what would happen with funds at the end of a class's time would happen. And then the language about that it will not be used for things such as class reunions, all that goes together instead of being separated by other areas of the policy.
I have a question. I don't understand why you removed what I thought was a basic sentence. All expenditures from activity accounts shall be related to the goals and objectives of the student activity programs.
Because it says
Is that somewhere else? I didn't pick it
it
up.
says it in the student activities accounting manual, and it also says it in the school code, but we can certainly leave it.
I think that's pretty basic.
Okay, sure. Okay, any other changes to that one? All right, we'll make that change as well for next week. All right, now the one that's a little more complicated. So this is the audit policy. And so typically the way we've done this is if we're making wholesale changes to a policy, sometimes it's easier if you notice sort of the red and green coloring, and that's not for the time of year, that's the way Board Docs does it. But if you notice it can get to be a lot. So in this particular case, and we've done this before, we may recommend deleting an existing policy and then adding a whole new one so we can kind of start over, and it makes it a little bit less confusing. So when we looked at the audit policy, there were two sections in the current policy that we have that we wanted to keep. One was in the kind of 200, 300 area where it talks about what the CFO, in this case, what I'm going to do when either the local auditors or the state auditors come and give us a finding, which is a specific type of recommendation. And then what we are going to do for anything that's not just kind of the highest level, which is a finding, but anything that would also be an observation or simply a verbal comment. and basically addressing that not only are we going to respond to the finding, which with the Auditor General's office we're required to do, with all of you, we would probably do just because we would think you would want to see that with the local auditors. And then it may seem as if this would just automatically happen, but it's in the policy and we didn't want to lose it, that I will actually then address whatever those findings or comments are with the appropriate staff within the district. So we did want to keep that, so when we go to the new one, you'll see we pulled some of that over. And then at the very end of this policy, the current policy, similar to what we were just talking about with legal services, there is a mechanism for periodic evaluation and review of the audit services. And so basically just saying that, you know, the board will make a recommendation, or the administration will make a recommendation to the board, but the board ultimately decides. The auditor gets approved at the December meeting, which you're all now just familiar with, that you can request proposals for those services. And then when you'll see when it comes back over to the other policy, we basically say that the fee and the engagement letter will be approved. So that's kind of how we do it with the auditors. They give us a formal engagement letter that you as the board approve. So Dr. Z, if we could then go to the new 619. So after reviewing some sample policies from some other districts, this one actually comes very much from West Shore School District. And Adele and I, as we sat down and reviewed it, just think it does a much better job of capturing what actually needs to happen and does happen with the audit. Again, you can see at the beginning where the auditor's fee is referenced. If you scroll down, then under authority, you can see some of the language about what the auditor will do when they come in. We tried to organize that to kind of go in order of the hierarchy of the auditors. So local auditors first, then the Auditor General's office, which would be the state audit next, and then the federal audit would be the third. And then, of course, you have an obligation through all of those audits to make those results publicly available. The guidelines, again, that's where I told you we were going to pull over that language, so we did that. And then statutorily, we are required to submit a signed statement to PDE certifying our financial statements. And so we put that in because that was something standard that was in the other sample policies that we looked at. So sorry, that one was a little confusing and a little long, but I think we got it and much prefer this policy over the one that we had, which was actually quite old from 2008, so probably really needed to be updated. Any questions on that one? All right, okay, last one then is, and this one is a little interesting because many of the other districts that we looked at actually deal only with fund balance and not with debt management. So I actually, there is a lawyer who works in RBC's office, and so I actually called him and sent him I sent him the whole policy, but asked him to look at the debt side of it and just make sure that there wasn't anything that we needed to change. And of course, a half an hour later, we had some changes. But so let me try to walk you through these. Again, some of the changes that you're going to see is just language changes to kind of make it follow the other policies, which follow the PSBA handbook a little more closely. But when you get down under authority, then you will start to see so changes there, and again, this is another thing that we've been trying to do with our policies is instead of laying out all the different laws is just say under applicable law, because frankly, the one law that interestingly enough is not mentioned here is the school code. And so the 2/3 vote is actually part of the school code for temporary debt. It's not required for a local government unit debt. So when you read that or had read that sentence the way it was drafted, it didn't even match the law as it should have. So that's the reason for that particular change. Then under definitions, so we said it probably made sense to refer to those laws, but certainly there could be other ones. Act 1 of 2006 came along later, so if something else comes up, we don't have to come back and necessarily change the policy.
You said 16, this says 6, which is right.
I'm
You said
sorry.
Act 1 of 2016.
Did I say that? I'm sorry.
It is
06.
2006, okay.
Yeah. Apologize for that. Short term is a definition that we did not have in the policy currently, so it kind of didn't make sense that we defined long term but not short term. The wording that we added under committed and assigned, and so we do this, which is the board takes action on both the committed and the assigned. So we are different than many other districts that way. Most districts are, well, you are required to take action on the committed. You're not required to take action on the assigned, but that's the way we've had it set up here. So we're leaving it the way it is, but that is more restrictive than the policy template. Again, we could take some of the short-term language out because if you go under to the limitations of indebtedness, you're going to see where we pulled that bids and quotes, which is the important section of that, down into kind of the procedure part. That's probably a bad way to say it, but the limitations part on how we would actually issue short-term debt. And then we did delete some sections on those 3 points on the long-term debt because the ability that you have as a board to issue long-term debt, the list is actually much more comprehensive than that. It's pretty long. It's, I want to say, maybe 8 or 10 items long. And so the other option would have been to just copy it out of the school code and put it in here, and that seemed a little like that's what we're trying not to do. So we're just going to say it will follow applicable law and be done with it. The Internal Revenue Code is how the maturity dates and everything happens. The IRS rules all that stuff. So we wanted to make sure that reference, that way if the IRS changes the code, we know what we're referring back to. And then I think at the very end, it's mostly just some language changes. It seemed a little, Dr. Z, if you could scroll down a little bit, please. It seemed a little confusing to us that we were saying designated and then assigned, and assigned is one of the categories. So we tried to just clean the wording up a little bit to be more clear about that it's a designation in non-spendable or restricted by the business office, but again, the committed or signed by the board. So lots of changes to that one, but, and we actually didn't review that one up that long ago, but just some items that, you know, really felt like they needed to be cleaned up. Any questions on that one? Okay,
Yeah.
very good. We'll
Thank
get those
you.
changes made for next week.
Also posted for everyone is the December 13th agenda. Is there any questions or changes to be made to that? It will include the first reading of the policies that we reviewed today. If not, this is the second part in the meeting where the public has a chance to address the board on any issue that they would wish. Is there anyone that would like to come forward? If not, do any board members have concerns or initiatives they'd like to bring up? We want to get out of here, don't we? If that's the case, I will entertain a
Can I say
motion.
something quick on that?
Yes, certainly.
I'd like to talk with the board about some different policies, like mask being one of them and stuff. Is that something that you prefer to do here or in an executive
No, we
meeting, like
can't do that in
afterwards or
executive
something?
session.
To even discuss it, whatever, you can't do
It would
that?
have to be on the, put it on the agenda if there's an issue you want brought up. Can I make the assumption you're talking about making an adjustment to the way we currently work?
Yes.
Okay. In that case, what you're doing is, do you know if you're asking to reconsider it or to rescind what we have?
To reconsider it,
To
yeah.
reconsider, well, I didn't mean to trap you.
Yeah, no.
We have passed the time for reconsideration.
Okay.
Okay. And rescinding it is probably even more difficult because we do not have the people that made the motion. Rescind also has to be done within a limited amount of time. If you're talking about an entire new policy, then we need the chance to review all the things that we're required to do.
Okay, and that's what my question was, is and if that's something that we
I
would talk
think
about at a
that's
separate
not-
time kind of thing.
Okay, I think what's most important right now is we need administration to give us a complete review of what it would require to do that.
Okay,
Okay, because we're not gonna just do it and find out that it's an empty motion.
right,
There's nothing we can do with it. But we can give a directive to administration to bring to us what it would look like and what would be required to legally make any changes to that,
okay,
okay?
yep, sounds good.
And I will take that as a directive right now unless the board tells me it's not interested in addressing this issue.
I think it's fine, but I think it's also important to know how we got from point A to point B to point C to point D, et cetera. Just because I don't think everybody knows,
Okay?
or everybody might not be on the same.
Because you like that to be included in the information they bring us, a quick recap of how we
How
get
did we get to this point? Why are we at this point? The decision made of
Okay.
what we did?
I
I think
guess-
just from an educational standpoint, I think it was beneficial for everyone to be.
I get the feeling the board would like to discuss this.
Sure.
So we will consider that a directive to administration to bring that to us as soon as they can put it together. Is there anything else? Is there any questions?
Duly noted. I've got it.
If there are no other
So
concerns,
just on a positive note, so the new fields that we put in out here, the new soccer fields, the
Yeah.
turf field, got some really good feedback from the tournament that they held 2 weekends ago on Saturday, that the fields held up well, they were awesome fields, they were professional
they
fields.
were level without little ruts in them?
Nothing, yeah, it was great. So
Wonderful.
really good, and non-CV students, soccer players
Used to
told me
have a
about the
field
fields.
tournament, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
really good feedback on the quality of the fields.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that we
So
got
that's a
our
plus.
money's worth out of
Yeah,
that.
they're nice fields.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for legal and personnel reasons.
So moved.
Second.
I have the motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Not, we are adjourned.
But then we have the time on Peter to,